You're talking almost, it sounds like a psychological sociology class, social class. Like it's about how we think about how our societies are supposed to be set up. It's how we think about them, how we've accepted the way that they were set up. And then the pandemic came in, and obviously it shook our worlds in so many different ways, individually and as communities of all types and sizes, and created new communities. The Stand Up with Pete Dominick community has been the best thing that's happened for me. And it's also what you're saying that we need to do more of is, I think, for example, work in our communities. But you give me the example. Am I right? Psychological sociology here. It's how we think about how our society is set up, or how we settled on what it became before the pandemic struck.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And Pete, you would be making my parents very proud, because I'm the daughter of two sociology professors. They would be like, "Oh, good, she finally came around after rebelling and going to law school."
I guarantee they're already. I can't imagine. I'd love to interview your parents, as a matter of fact, about you. But go ahead.
Oh, that's a conversation we're never going to let happen. But setting that aside, no, I think you're putting it really well, right? Because to get really kind of brass tacks, and we'll offer some really like practical examples here. I've spent my entire career working broadly at the intersection of inside the system and outside the system, right? That some people call it the inside outside game, where it's like you learn how the system works and you develop relationships with people that you can influence, but you're also working on the outside with the folks who are outside, right? And that's sort of how I've bridged as a legal aid lawyer, as somebody who's been an organizer in policy spaces and in advocacy spaces, as someone who's done a lot of work with narrative shift. It's sort of bridging inside and outside. And the reason that I say that in those terms, especially for people who maybe don't do public policy work and wonder, like, how do things happen? How does an idea become a bill, become a law, right? Well, what it takes is it takes someone starting with an idea, right? And if the idea that someone has and the place that you're starting is just tinkering within the edges of what already exists, the status quo, then you're going to get lots of refining of, okay, the thing that already exists. But if the place that you start is actually something that is fundamentally wholesale different than what already exists, and it's a dream, it's a vision, right? It's not within the four corners of the status quo, then that's where you have to do the work to actually get to a place where that dream can become a reality. And that's what takes shifts in collective consciousness. And it's not actually all that common that people in policy spaces talk about it in these terms, right? We might talk about public opinion. We might talk about polling. Sometimes people want to sound really cool and be like, I do narrative shift work, right? Which is like the new hot thing in Washington, D.C. But all of it fundamentally is actually, it's consciousness work, because in order to build public and political will around something that needs to change in order for justice or liberation to come about, for example, you need people to first be aware of the social ill, right? And then you need there to be enough attention around that social ill that our policymakers feel like they have to act. So that's a little bit of the kind of the part that never gets talked about for how policies, public policies that impact huge numbers of people, or laws that get passed and impact huge numbers of people, go from an idea into a reality. So I think of myself, and I don't know that I've talked about this publicly much, so here I'm saying it to you, and now I'm going to say it publicly. I think of myself, and I think of everyone who does public policy work, as we're all in the business of reality creation. That's what it is, right? Because frankly, when you're involved with making public policies and laws, there's a lot of privilege and a lot of responsibility that comes along with that, because of how many other people's lives you're going to impact.